Anyone who's watched a horror movie knows that dolls, children, and animals always mean sheer terror. But Kampung Monyet, Indonesia, takes horror to a new level by dressing their local masked monkeys in children's clothing and attaching dirty doll heads to their faces. This old Indonesian tradition goes back centuries, but has recently been abused by poor street performers as a novelty act called Topeng Monyet, or simply masked monkey. The monkeys in these freaky acts are chained and live in abusive, poor conditions where devastating transmittable diseases like tuberculosis and hepatitis spread quickly. The Indonesian government recently took measures to prevent these terrifying masked monkey shows because of the wildly inhumane and unsanitary conditions they represent. Granted, it was without much luck, because there are still over 150 masked monkeys hauntingly creeping around any corner in Kampung Monyet. Usually, water represents life and abundance, but in the case of Lake Natron, located near the Tanzanian-Kenyan border, death is more of an accurate picture. It's so lethal that one too many hours exposed to the vapors alone can kill you. The water of this disgusting pool is so full of salt that it naturally mummifies and murders thousands of animals a year. Because of its high salinity, the temperatures of this lake can reach an astounding 140 degrees Fahrenheit. These insane temperatures often cause Lake Natron to dry up and leave the calcified remains of animal carcasses mummified in the desert sun. If that wasn't enough, because of the weird algae and bacteria that manage to survive in Lake Natron, it often turns blood red before quickly drying up and scabbing over like a sick, infected flesh wound. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium originally opened in 1910 to care for patients suffering from tuberculosis. Unfortunately, the hospital quickly found itself overwhelmed by the infectious disease during an epidemic in the early 20th century and replaced the two-story shack with a 5-story Gothic behemoth. Since tuberculosis is an extremely contagious airborne bacteria, they designed this new building to be a self-contained town, with even its own post office, zip code, and farm. Waverly even had a complex tunnel system underneath it to exchange any extra supplies and give the dead back to the living, because at the time, tuberculosis had more than a 90% mortality rate. The idea was, once you checked in, you never checked out. This death sentence applied not only to patients, but doctors, nurses, and any other person who set foot through these doors. No one was allowed to leave, ever. But if you did, it was inside a body bag. Just outside of Guatemala City, unusually high death rates cause cemeteries to start building up into the land of the living, instead of down in the dirt with the dead. These creepy crypts are built vertically by stacking one body on top of another in long rows as far as the eye can see. The demand for burial crypts in Guatemala City is so extreme that general cemeteries charge rent to keep dead bodies housed properly. If the deceased family can't spring the cash to keep the crypt of their loved ones undisturbed, then the grave is covered in red paint. This is so common that every single day they pull out dead bodies from the red crypts and abruptly dump them with hundreds of others into a large communal grave right next to the city dump. Even if you have a taste for the unusual, the pieces on display at Amsterdam's Museum Vrolijk will leave a formaldehyde taste in your mouth. This vast collection was originally owned by Dutch anatomist Gerardus Vrolijk and his bizarre son. Before they sold it, the Museum Vrolijk is jam-packed with dead, preserved oddities like fetuses, conjoined children's skeletons, and mutated baby bodies suspended in formaldehyde. The excuse for their super morbid rooms filled with dead children is because they are used as study tools for medical students at the university. But don't worry, your morbid curiosity can still take a look, because admission to this freak zone is free.